Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel and also to share the content. Anti-racist education. We are at a stage in our history where we must examine our own philosophical positions that can radically affect the diet of education received by some students. This blog would focus on the need to give consideration to anti-racist education. Let me begin by saying, many people will find the term anti-racist education somewhat offensive. However, please be assured it is not meant to be. I have a white colleague of mine who once stated to me that he is a racist, and therefore he had to ensure that he went beyond his embedded beliefs to include others. According to him, he had to make a daily effort. The unwillingness to engage in consistent reflection will also lead to racist practices that has been acquired during the process of socialization. But what exactly does the term anti-racism mean? Anti-racism means unlearning racist ideas, learning new ways to see the world, engaging in difficult work needed to bring about meaningful change, and adopting policies that manifest the changes needed to make our communities more just. One key method of producing members of our society to see the world in a different way is via education. The reality is, classrooms are one of the major ways to combat systematic oppression that has been manifested in our country's history through racism, sexism, homophobia, and other forms of oppression. For years, the concept of critical literacy was aimed at doing the same thing via the lens of equality within our society. Therefore, whether it be critical literacy or anti-racist education, we all need a pathway to reduce our societal conflicts. Therefore, educational institutions need to reformulate the curriculum to ensure that students are encouraged to critically question their schools and the context of United States society. As Pablo Freire stated, participants of our education system must be readers of the world and the word. Pablo Freire's thought makes a connection to Thompson's view, who suggests that there needs to be democratic education. According to Thompson, in a radicalized and racist society, if education is to be democratic, it must be specifically anti-racist. Thompson continues by saying, we cannot rely on generic programs of education either to undercut the impact of racism on students' learning or to alleviate the educational system of any specific responsibility for addressing racism. In other words, institutions of learning must address the issue of racism. Therefore, a curriculum that gives consideration to anti-racist education will allow well-meaning teachers to examine their prejudices and take active steps to combat them. Furthermore, such restructuring would dismantle racism embedded in our system. The need to educate students about race and racism is clearly felt in higher education. For example, one study found that educators in some school districts were shocked to learn that black students were treated differently from white students, even if they had the same violation, as a matter of fact, the identical violation. Another study by the American Civil Liberties Union in New York found that numbers of suspensions and expulsions of black students had increased by 50% when compared to their counterparts who were white, who were 32 out of 100 as it relates to punishment. An anti-racist educational framework will establish the context, history, and manifestation of racism, as well as provide tools to build anti-racist practices. Having this framework will provide educators with an understanding of how racism affects students. An anti-racist framework will also provide educators with the strategies needed for implementing cultural, relevant, and inclusive practices as a step forward for reducing racism in schools. The commitment to fight racism must be expressed in institutional policies, statements, guidelines, and code of practice. Institutions must also develop their own anti-racist policies detailing what steps it will take to prevent racism. The tick box approach should be avoided. Let us not forget that an anti-racist framework means recognizing that racist beliefs are structured within our system and are omnipresent, and therefore working actively to dismantle these beliefs and structures will always be required. On reflection, if education is to do more than refine social expressions and responses to racism, it must embrace racism as a central part of reshaping our meaning and values. Racism is not only a problem in the classroom, but also in our society as well as in our everyday lives. We are at a turning point in the landscape of education. No longer can we say that our curriculum is neutral. Of course it is not. Therefore, we need to dismantle the structures that consistently sustain inequality in our educational system. Personally, I am not sure where we're heading based on what's happening. However, I can just hope for the best. I'm hoping that by sharing my thoughts, I will contribute to the discussion on this critical notion. Thanks for listening, thanks for viewing, and please remember to share the content as well as like and subscribe to this channel.